This is Karl Moore talking management. Today I'm delighted to speak once again to Amy Edmondson, who's a professor at the Harvard Business School. For a number of years, Amy, you've been looking at with your colleagues what happens in the medical context in terms of teams. What are some of your latest learnings about that these days?
Medical context is a fascinating one to study these phenomena because they tend to be sped up, more intense, so very interesting to look at. It's the way that scientists look at fruit flies because they go through generations so quickly, you can learn quickly from them about certain genetic patterns. Similarly, I find that when we study medical professionals in a very fast-paced setting like an emergency room, we see some of the challenges that people in other kinds of organizations, business organizations, face, but we see it in Technicolor. We see the challenge of communicating across disciplinary boundaries. We see the challenge of dealing with status. And we see the challenge of solving really important problems in a fast way. And we learn, first of all, that it goes much better when people really listen to each other, which is not natural to do. People tend to come in, especially to fast, intense situations, thinking, I see it, I understand what's happening, and I know what's right. And it's harder to stop and listen to others. So recently, we've been looking at some emergency rooms that have put in a very interesting device that we call a team scaffold. And what a scaffold is, because they can't have stable teams. It's 24/7 operations, it's fast-paced, people are flowing through to train only for a few weeks and so on. So instead of having stable teams, they have stable team scaffolds. And this is work with a very capable PhD student named Melissa Valentine. And a scaffold is a role set. So in order to, you come to work each day, you don't know which scaffold you'll be assigned to, but you will, if you're a physician, you'll be assigned to a scaffold with X number of other physicians, X number of other nurses, and various other roles. It will always be the same role set, but it will be different people. The very fact of having just this smaller universe within the very complex, busy setting of an emergency room to coordinate only with you 6 people, as opposed to all 100 of them, allows them very quickly to, I'll learn your name, for example, whereas in pre-scaffolds, I wouldn't learn your name. It becomes easier for me to talk to you and ask you a question or ask for help if I know your name, and so on. So it's given that they can't create stable teams, they realized they could create these stable scaffolds and give people almost the illusion of being part of a team because they're part of a team for maybe a few hours at a time. Okay. And we find that it speeds up the patient throughput through the emergency room and helps other outcomes as well.
How do we take these ideas from medicine and apply them in the business context? Do you have any thoughts for us there?
I think in more and more organizational settings, there's a need for people to get up to speed quickly and work together, even though they're not part of stable teams. And so using this idea of, well, when can we put almost temporary structures in place to help people do that? Scaffolds of all kinds. A scaffold could be a role set, meaning like a pickup basketball game rather than a stable basketball team. But it also can be just rules or guidelines for interaction that help us manage the complexity that we would otherwise face more simply. So a set of procedural guidelines through which we communicate, for example, is another kind of scaffold that helps teaming.